This is an important moment for the world. COVID-19 vaccines are being distributed. Some vaccines must be transported and stored at temperatures as low as minus 70 degrees Celsius. Our cold chain solutions help protect and preserve vaccines through distribution and storage to prevent waste and instill a sense of confidence in the condition of the vaccine. We already have an installed base of more than 1 million transport refrigeration units available to safely move vaccines and other perishable products around the world. Additionally, Carrier's advanced Sensitech monitoring solutions are embedded in shipments and move with vaccines from production at the lab to their final distribution site. These monitors measure the condition of shipments throughout the cold chain. Carrier pods support mobile, temperature-controlled storage, with Sensitech monitoring and are connected to our Lynx digital platform for added visibility and insights. Carrier is committed to being part of the solution to address the global pandemic and protect people around the world.
Welcome to the Healthcare Cold Chain webinar, the first in the Healthy, Safe, Sustainable Cold Chain webinar series hosted by Carrier. Thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, we will be recording this session for those unable to join us live today. My name is Heather Robbins, and I work in the Communications Department at Carrier Refrigeration headquarters in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We're excited to bring you a program today that examines the critical need for enhanced cold chain solutions, visibility, and monitoring as the world responds to the urgent need for the COVID vaccine distribution to address the global pandemic. Today's webinar will feature insights from world-renowned subject matter experts on the state of the global vaccine rollout, as well as the challenges middle and low-income countries face. Dr. Umit Kartoglu will join us from Geneva, Switzerland, to provide his perspective on how the world has responded to the need for temperature-controlled logistics for the transport and storage of pharmaceuticals. Dr. Kartoglu has served at all levels of the public health system, including UNICEF and the World Health Organization. He also brought to life the WHO-UNICEF Effective Vaccine Management Initiative, the Global Training Network for Vaccine Management, the Performance, Quality, and Safety Initiative, and the Global Learning Opportunities Network. We are honored to have him share his perspective here with us today. And now, more than ever, the cold chain plays a vital role in delivering critical vaccines and medicines. And today, we will hear from my esteemed colleagues at Carrier Transicold and Sensitech, who will discuss the solutions offered by Carrier that help move, monitor, and store vaccines around the globe while maintaining efficacy. First, we will hear from Henry Ames, General Manager of Life Sciences at Sensitech, based near Boston, Massachusetts, who will provide an overview of the business's role in ensuring the cold chain is safe and effective for pharmaceuticals and vaccines through cargo security and logistics performance. I'll turn it over to you, Henry.
Well, thank you, Heather, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to all of you who've taken time out of your busy day to spend with us this morning, this afternoon, or this evening. Over the next 40 minutes, Dr. Kartoglu and I plan to cover two key elements. First, I'm going to provide you with an overview of recent developments related to the pandemic and its impact on the future of real-time in-transit monitoring technology. Dr. Kartoglu will then compare and contrast broader drug distribution trends in the emerging markets, and I'll highlight why that's going to be so critical for the future of eliminating this pandemic. So before we begin to delve into the details, I'd like to take a step back and give you a sort of a fun tutorial on what I would call good cold chain management practices. Given the choice, which one of these bananas might you choose? One might you prefer? Most people would like to choose either C or D. Now, if we took this to the next stage, which choice, if you had the choice of a particular vial of vaccine, which vial here might you choose? Vial A or vial B? Now, this is obviously a hypothetical scenario because your healthcare provider is not going to give you the option to use vial A or vial B. What if your nurse tells you that he thought one of the vials may have been temperature abused? When the package arrived, the gel packs were a bit warm and he's not sure. Now, which vial might you choose? So it's quite obvious here that in the case of products like produce, temperature abuse and or stages of ripening are going to be quite visible. In the case of medicines, it's virtually impossible to tell just by looking at the product whether or not it's efficacious. So when we take a step back and look at a regulatory perspective, if it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. So to paraphrase or take a phrase from Dr. Edwards Deming, as well as a phrase regularly used by our former technical advisor, Dr. Rafiq Bashara, in God we trust. For everyone else, show me the data. So let's talk about how that data gets collected. What are the best practices for collecting data to ensure product quality, purity, efficacy, potency? Sensitech's been in the business of collecting data, supply chain data for over 30 years. Those first 20 years or so were focused largely on the left-hand side here on cold chain management. Over a decade ago, we acquired a company called FreightWatch International, and that moved us very quickly into the real-time in-transit space. We've had over 10 years of experience in monitoring using real-time technology, and we'll talk a little bit about cargo security and its role in the ensuring product safety for this vaccine as well. As we look towards the future, however, this information is now being used to drive logistics performance and predictive and prescriptive analytics in terms of providing overall supply chain visibility. Next slide, please. Let's briefly take a look at some of the stressors that emerged as a result of the pandemic and how it impacted the vaccination effort. First of all, you had a number of supply chain constraints. Air freight capacity was limited almost overnight. Not flying due to decrease in demand. You had limited vaccine manufacturing capacity, which I'll come back to at the end of this presentation. You had challenging storage temperatures, as referenced in the earlier video. The two vaccines that received early EUA approval were stored at either frozen temperatures, -20, or dry ice temperatures, even much colder. You had limited stability data for that product in terms of its time out of refrigeration. And there was a volume and variation in terms of the administration locations. And then, of course, there was always the risk of potential theft or counterfeiting of this product as it moved through a very complex supply chain. So I briefly highlighted some of the stressors associated with the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's now talk about the complexity around the flow of goods. The key takeaway from this slide is that this image obviously looks quite complex. But I would argue to you that this is a very simplistic model of product drug distribution. Product flows through from the manufacturer to the point of administration. And what was unique about this current pandemic and the movement of COVID-19 vaccine is you had a much more streamlined sort of chain of custody. You had drug manufacturers selling directly to the countries themselves, the governments purchasing the product. And then you had, of course, governments working with their ministries of health to contract with various distributors to move that product to administration sites as quickly as possible. You had the erection of new global vaccine administration sites, which was something uncharacteristic and unprecedented in terms of broad vaccination efforts. And this added further to the complexity. Next slide, please. So as a result of the pandemic, there was a heightened importance on broader supply chain visibility for the vaccine. We saw a rapid and relatively broad adoption of technology. Many of you probably read about various trucks being held up at border crossings across Europe and other regions across the globe. almost overnight, it became incredibly important to understand, where is my product? What condition is it in? Can I anticipate a late arrival, an early arrival? Has it reached a cross dock in the expected time frame? Was there a late departure? Is there a risk of crime or theft associated with my particular shipment? Slide, please. Early on in the pandemic, the Sensitech team, our internal team, was regularly meeting in February and March of last year, talking about how all of these elements might impact not only our business, but our customers, how we could be supportive of those. I would tell you, back in February and March of last year, we were actively already talking about the concerns around cargo theft and supply chain integrity as this vaccine was going to be rolled out. It wasn't until December of last year that Interpol started warning of threats against crime for this product. And one can only imagine the horrific scenario under which an organized crime group or any other organization seeking to do harm would obtain this product, potentially adulterate it, and then make its way back into the legitimate supply chain. What impact that might have, not only on the health outcome of individuals impacted, but also the global economy. Let me take you through a brief example of work Sensitech is doing to ensure product quality and patient safety. We are actively today monitoring some of the COVID-19 vaccine specific to real-time in-transit visibility and combating the risk against theft. Global program, it's covering roughly 21 origin sites and over 60 destination sites. To date, we've already monitored over 500 shipments, and we've identified over 150 risk events. Those risk events get escalated based on a customer's documented escalation protocols. Over the course of the next 2 years, we anticipate monitoring over 20,000 shipments of COVID-19 vaccine. And all Sensitech employees should be very proud about the work we're doing to ensure product quality and patient safety, helping to get us out of this pandemic as quickly as possible. So before I turn it over to Dr. Carter, let me leave you with just a few sort of parting thoughts. While the developed markets are sort of on the tail end of this and beginning to emerge from this horrific scenario over the last 14, 15 months, the developing markets are not so. The Economist, which I highly recommend, it's a fantastic read, recently published an article, a whole series on the COVID vaccine. The Economist is estimating that we've lost globally between 7 and almost 13 million lives that would not have otherwise been lost as a result of the pandemic. And while the death rate has been high in the developed markets, it's been even worse in the emerging markets. In India today, we're seeing almost 20,000 deaths every 24 hours. And while this sounds absolutely unimaginable, it's substantially worse in other markets. For example, Peru, today the pandemic is roughly 2 times as worse as what's being seen in India on a per capita basis. And this is important to all of us because the less circulating virus means the less mutations and means the better safe outcomes for the global, the health of our global economy. I should leave you with an interesting point. Before this pandemic, the global manufacturing capacity was estimated by The Economist to be roughly 3.5 billion doses a year. By the end of 2021, the estimate is that we have invested globally to increase manufacturing capacity to almost 11 billion doses a year. That would be enough for roughly 2 doses for every person on the planet, for 70% of every person on the planet, which would roughly be in the neighborhood of what epidemiologists talk about in terms of herd immunity. So we've come a long, long way over the last 15 months, but there still is a long way to go. And with that, let me turn it over to Dr. Carter, who will take us through the complexity of what's happening in the emerging markets.
Just 1 second. I'm going to full screen now.
Go ahead, Dr. Cardiglou.
Okay. Thank you so much, Henry, for this excellent presentation. Now I would like to take all of you to the field reality, what happens in the field. In 2011, there was a study somewhere in the world. The authorities decided to make a study of the service points where they immunize children to see how well they are complying with the rules of the vaccine management. They did a representative sampling of the facilities, and they visited all of them. They checked the practices. They also recorded the temperature in their refrigerators with reference devices for 2 weeks period. And then they documented the failure rates. So none of the facilities in this country managed to meet the vaccine management requirements that were predefined before this study. And remember that they were doing the temperature recording with reference devices. When they compare these results with the practitioners' temperature records, it was 100% inaccurate. 76% of the facilities had temperature excursions beyond 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for at least 5 continuous hours for the last 2 weeks. And 84% of the facilities didn't have any documentation that was necessary. And more tragic, I would say, 36% of the facilities had expired vaccines, which presents a very big risk for mix-ups, no matter how well you mark these expired vaccines, because vaccine management practices dictate that any expired vaccine should not be kept in the cold chain and should be removed. I don't want you to attest, but where do you think this study took place? Was it in France? Was it in Mali, USA, Kenya, India? There's a general belief that such problems happen only in developing world, which is wrong. Actually, this study took place in the US. Yes, it was 2011, and following these pretty dramatic results, CDC introduced some corrective measures, and it published new guidelines for managing vaccines in practitioners' offices. However, we do not have any follow-up study that would compare the results of 2011 with the results of today. But the message that I want to give here is that such problems occur everywhere and anywhere in the world. So cold chain problems are, so all vaccines are temperature sensitive. Some are also, all vaccines are temperature sensitive. All vaccines are sensitive to heat, some sensitive to cold, and some vaccines are sensitive. So because of this, all products temperature sensitive products, including vaccines, should be kept under certain regimes. Some years ago, life was so easy for people handling vaccines. There were only two types of cold chain. One was mainly for liquid vaccines, that was for 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, which was called cold chain. And the other one was from minus 15 to minus 25 centigrade for the products that could be frozen. And it was also, so easy those days that the freeze sensitive products, we used to teach people saying that if a product has letter T in it, that product is freeze sensitive, should not be frozen, like diphtheria, hepatitis B, Haemophilus influenza type B, tetanus, pertussis, measles. No, there is no T in measles, so measles can be frozen. But then it became, with the increase in portfolio, this became a bit complicated, that we don't use this T series approach anymore to teach people which vaccines are sensitive to freezing. Very recently, we had a new product, but there's only one product here. We're speaking about vaccines, which is Rotacil Thermo, it's called. This is the vaccine that is licensed to be kept, stored 30 months at 25 centigrade degree, which eases the logistics of this product extremely well. And with the COVID, majority of the countries met with a new temperature requirement for vaccines, that is minus 62, minus 90 degree ultra cold, with the introduction of Comirnaty vaccine. Although we had Ebola vaccine earlier that should be kept at the same temperature, but Ebola vaccine was in use only in certain countries that were hit by the Ebola outbreak in Africa, not in the rest of the world. Well, these three temperature regimes, the products that need to be kept in these three temperature regimes, they have very well established stability data. What we mean with stability data is how good these products are viable, durable, if they are exposed to temperatures below or above their recommended temperature range. And these studies put together a kind of a stability budget. What can be, what are the allowable exposures from this budget? It's like the budget that, financial budget that we have. So we have to arrange our budget in a way that, we pay for the rent or for the loan, for kitchen, for, buying dresses, for education, for entertainment, and so on. So it's exactly the same for vaccine products as well. What kind of excursions that we can have in the international transport, maximum allowable ones. So we have enough budget to spend for such exposure for the rest of the life of the product. However, we don't have such well-established stability data for the main reason is because when these products, the new COVID vaccine, this Comirnaty, for example, when it was developed and the time that it was licensed, we didn't have enough time period to establish, stability data as we used to establish for all other products. So these stability profiles, stability budgets of these products are kind of changing, because you may remember, if you are following, this Comirnaty vaccine was possible to be kept 1 week at 2 to 8 degrees if it is taken from your cold. Now with the new stability data, that is approved by FDA and EMA, which is the European Medicinal Agency equivalent of FDA, to be kept at 2 to 8 degrees, now 31 days. But vaccine manufacturers for COVID, I'm speaking of COVID, demand that countries contact them if there is any temperature excursion instead of sharing the stability data with them. So this is what happens if you don't share the data. So some weeks ago, I woke up with my phone ringing 3 in the morning, and one of my friends, who was an immunization manager in one of the countries in East Asia, was calling me, asking for my help, what to do for a big amount of COVID vaccine that is exposed to temperatures above 8 degrees. So should he have the stability information for that product, I should have been sleeping very sweet that night. And his calls, which I'm not complaining, his calls continued actually, because of the huge time, the difference, he couldn't manage always calling in, good time for me. But the whole issue here is you need to have this information in order to respond on time. So here I would like to summarize these stability budgets of these vaccines, but I need to underline one thing that, for example, let's take measles. Measles vaccine from X company may have a certain stability budget. It doesn't mean that the same vaccine from another company would have the same stability budget. Because of the differences in manufacture and some additional ingredients that they may have, they may definitely will have different stability budgets. So the examples I'm giving here is just an example. Not all products can have such stability budgets, but this is just to imagine how stable these vaccines are. For example, oral polio vaccine can withstand 37 degrees Celsius continuous exposure for 2 days, 48 hours. For example, measles can withstand 37 degree exposure for 7 days. That can still be used. Injectable polio vaccine withstands the same temperature for 11 days, where diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine can withstand for 14, hepatitis B 30 days. And of course, the champion is the Rotacil Thermo with 250 days at 37 degrees. So the cold chain that we're speaking about is a kind of entire chain of storage facilities, means of transport, equipment, devices, workforce that make all this work, and the procedures and the rules and paperwork that we have. As you can imagine, during this whole cold chain, there are touch points. That means from manufacturer till the product reaches the end user, it changes hands. And as you may lose the button here, the stick, these are the critical control points that majority of the time things may go wrong. So if you think of a product, let's take a vaccine that has 2 years of expiry. So the international transport, that is the most regulated, the most controlled section of a life of a product is only around 1% of its lifetime if it has 2 years of expiry. And majority the big chunk, that is the 99%, takes place in storage and transport between facilities and at the last mile at the country level. So let me take you to the country level to see what is happening over there with these products. So I'll tell you the story of a study that we did when I was working with WHO. Well, of course, oxytocin is not a vaccine. It's a time and temperature sensitive pharmaceutical product, which is one of the 13 life-saving commodities for women and children declared by UN Commission. Why it is so critical? Because this is the product that stops bleeding after delivery. So it is extremely critical for maternal health. It prevents maternal deaths from bleeding. So it is the key for postpartum hemorrhage in medical terms. So we followed the product from its manufacturer in Germany, coming to a distributor in Netherlands, and from Netherlands sent to Ghana, and from Ghana, after acceptance, going into the central storage, and then distributed 4 districts, 4 regions, and from 4 regions distributed to 8 locations. So here's the graph, temperature graph that is overlapped. I know this looks, very crowded and very complicated, but I wanted to show you because it's an overlap graph of a total of 16 different routes. So you can see here that there are a lot of the disparity between the measurements, but here, all 16 kind of overlap here. So let me show you a more simplified version of this. So the green band, which is the 2 to 8 degree, is where these vaccines, where this product oxytocin should be kept, stored and transported. And let's keep in mind, this is the same supply chain that vaccines also travel through, okay? So from the manufacturer to the distributor, it was within the range. And when it was stored in distribution facility, it was within the range. And then it was sent within the range to Ghana International Transport. And when it was in transit at the airport, until Ghanaian authorities accepted the shipment, it was within the limits. And let's see what happened afterwards. Central store, transport to regions, storage at regions, transport to health facilities, and what happened at the health facilities. So what happened is we measured from minus 10 degree to plus 30 degree here. So you can see how problematic it is, and it becomes more and more problematic the more you go to the periphery in the supply chain. When I was in WHO, I used to run a pharmaceutical cold chain management on wheels course. This is a course that it takes place on a bus. We have 3 worldwide known mentors, experts in the field of cold chain. We have mix of public and private, 15 representatives of pharmaceutical and vaccine cold chain in the industry, participants, 15 on the bus. We don't teach in this course. We don't lecture anybody, but we take participants on a 6-day travel from one facility to another, like wholesaler, hospital, warehouse, primary health center, retail pharmacies, and we split the participants into groups, and with the help of the mentors, they analyze the practices and they do the risk assessments. And after that, when we're traveling from one location to our next one, we stop in rest areas, bars and cafes, and we convert the places into a classroom, and a hot debate starts on a cold chain subject. So I met Henry in a international pharma cold chain meeting, and next year Henry was with us among the mentors for the course that we had in Greece, together with me and David Ulrich from Abbott, quality department. And here we are in Lamia in a wholesaler, discussing with the staff, and it's always a must. We must have a group photo before we leave the facility. So here's the Lamia visit, and then here's we are in a taverna, and you see Henry, helping the group with their discussions and to come a conclusion. So the group, these results could be presented to the group. We also visited retail pharmacies. Me and Henry, we were in the same group, and we were pretty lucky because this facility was immaculate from the cold chain management perspective. But we heard from the other groups that it wasn't like this in the other places, and it was pretty problematic. So we decided to conduct a study in Volos in Greece with a similar protocol as we did in Ghana. So here's the results of the Greece study that was conducted with the pharmacies. So this is one of the pharmacies. As you see below, that they missed because they are using thermometer, alcohol thermometer. Alcohol thermometer is not a monitoring device. Alcohol thermometer tells you what the temperature is if you look at it. It doesn't have any brain. It cannot tell you what has happened at night. It cannot tell you between morning and evening what has happened, and it cannot tell you what has happened during weekends because it doesn't have any brain. It doesn't work like this. So they missed a lot of alarms that could have a serious impact on the product. So what they measured with their device was between 6 and 10 degrees. We also had the data loggers in all the refrigerators, and this is what we measured from -5 to +14. Here's another pharmacy. They measured between 5 and 9, and we measured between 5 and 20 degrees. And as you can see here, this one missed a lot of high alarms, the heat alarms here. So why we're measuring all these things? Because we need to know what is happening in order to come up with, apply the control measures. Let me give you an example from car. I believe that, everybody somehow, the driving. So the first control measure is the detection. We have lights to see what is in front of us. Lights also help us to be visible to the other cars. And if something is in front, not to crash, as a prevention control measure, you push brakes. And if it doesn't work, that one crashes, and then in order to reduce the impact on the product, which is it's us here, the airbag pops up, so we're not injured, badly. So this is the mitigation control measure. If we apply these principles to the cold chain, for example, we have temperature monitoring devices as detection measure. They tell us the different monitoring devices speak of different aspects of the problem, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened, and so on. You may have different level of detail of data through this detection. We have coolants, PCMs, and the ice packs, and so on, in order to put to the cold boxes when we transport the vaccines or other temperature sensitive pharmaceutical products, so they are not exposed to higher temperatures. So we prevent them being exposed to higher temperatures. And should things go wrong, for example, we have generator as a mitigation measure. When there is a power cut, the temperature will rise. So in order to mitigate the severity impact of the rise in temperature on the product, so generator kicks in as a mitigation measure like an airbag. This is a very short story of how World Health Organization, when I was working with World Health Organization, decided the design criteria for the best international shipping indicator for vaccines. Because you remember the study in US that was done in 2011 and the Greece study. The major problem was the type of temperature monitoring devices that are used, okay? So we really need to have a good design temperature monitoring device. So in an international shipment, you have manufacturer, logistics service provider, and the recipient. So recipient wants to know whether there was an alarm, whether I can take the product or I have to reject. It's kind of, yes or no situation for them. But manufacturer and the logistics service provider needs to know more. Even the temperature excursions that didn't result in an alarm, because these are the warning signs for them for future that they have to address from now before they become a real problem. So we need alarms in this device. And then because recipient doesn't need to know details of these alarms, but manufacturer and the logistics service provider, they do need to know. So they need to know when it happened, where it happened, to what extent it happened. So they meet with minimum, maximum temperatures, duration, and the timing of the exposure. So all these came up as the design criteria for the new device. Those days, we were using two different chemical devices. One was on the left. These are chemical devices for the freeze indication, and the other one was for the heat. And here's one example of the electronic device that came up that meets what manufacturer, logistics service provider, and the recipient wants to know to such detail. It was long time ago. One of my friends who used to be a logistics staff in one of the big pharma companies in US, he was putting either chocolate or butter cubes in the box of the product for international shipments that should not be exposed to 30 degrees. Why? Because he didn't have those days any temperature monitoring devices, because both these products, their melting point is around 30 degrees. So the question was how soft it is when the recipient received, and whether it lost the shape. Even it goes back to the normal temperature, it may be solid, become solid back again, but it could be shapeless, kind of. But we don't need to handle the cold chain with the chocolates and with the butters anymore. Now we have devices that tells us with any detail we want what has happened, to what extent it happened, where it happened, and so on, the full history of the storage of the transportation throughout the cold chain. And these products help us to bring the products, time and temperature sensitive pharmaceutical products, including vaccines, efficacious to the locations where we need to use them for children, for mothers, and for adults. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Cardiglu. Your expertise on global pharmaceutical transport and storage logistics is invaluable. Now, joining us from Singapore is Kartik Kumar, Vice President and General Manager of Global Container Refrigeration at Carrier, to share information about advanced refrigerated transportation and storage. I'll turn it over to you, Kartik.
Thank you, Heather. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are well and keeping safe. I'm Kartik Kumar, Vice President and General Manager of Global Container Refrigeration with Carrier. You've just heard from my colleague, Henry Ames, about the role of Sensitech, and from Dr. Cardiglu about the challenges of vaccine distribution. Now, let me tell you about how we at Carrier Container Refrigeration are doing our part to help with a healthy, safe, and sustainable cold chain. For more than 50 years, Carrier Transicold has been the industry leader in marine container refrigeration. We are the preferred supplier of innovative, reliable container refrigeration systems for the world's shipping lines and leasing customers. We have a large installed base with more than 960,000 container refrigeration units operating in every part of the world. And on any given day, Carrier Transicold's container refrigeration systems help protect over $9 billion worth of perishable food and medicine traveling across the ocean. Today, Carrier's comprehensive sales and service network includes over 400 container refrigeration support, service, and repair centers worldwide in all major and developing ports. Now, on the topic of medicine and healthcare, with COVID-19 being a major concern on most of our minds, refrigeration has a critical role to play in the safe distribution of not only the COVID-19 vaccines, but also related support equipment like thermal insulation and phase change material packaging. Due to the vaccine's sensitivity to temperature changes and the number of handoffs, as you just saw in Dr. Cardiglu's presentation, which is required from production to when it actually gets to a person, maintaining the integrity of the cold chain is extremely critical. For customers interested in adding cold storage capacity or helping to ensure the shelf life of vaccines, we introduced carrier pods monitored by Sensitech. And these pods not only deliver precise temperature control, but they also provide digital intelligence through Lynx Fleet by integrating the Sensitech cargo data, providing secure temperature recording, and they are also good distribution practice GDP compliant. The carrier pods are based on our PrimeLine and Natural Line refrigerated units, where both have been deployed for years in the transport of perishables amid challenging operating conditions at sea, including the shipment of pharmaceutical products. The PrimeLine unit has been the industry bestseller for over 13 years and has a long track record in terms of strong customer adoption, as well as low operating cost and total cost of ownership. No refrigeration unit on the market today provides the full load performance as energy efficiently as the PrimeLine unit. Now, building on our legacy of sustainability, we created the future of container refrigeration, which is the first natural refrigerant-based solution developed for marine container shipping. The Natural Line unit delivers an environmentally sustainable alternative for refrigerated marine transport. Just as our PrimeLine unit raised the bar for energy efficiency, the Natural Line unit sets a new standard for sustainability. By using carbon dioxide as a natural refrigerant, the Natural Line design improves upon the PrimeLine unit's ability to reduce carbon emissions by up to 28% compared to previous units which used synthetic refrigerants. These units also provide reliable deep frozen container refrigeration performance that is further enhanced with the Lynx Fleet solution, which I'll talk to in a minute, taking the minimum temperature that you can maintain right down to negative 40 degrees C, allowing for even colder storage capabilities for our customers while still maintaining tight temperature control. Now, speaking about Lynx, adding further to the capabilities of our refrigeration units is our Lynx Fleet telematics solution. Designed with our customers in mind, Lynx Fleet intelligently monitors connected refrigeration systems from anywhere in the world. It provides vital information through a centralized data stream and improves visibility for shipping lines, fleet owners, service technicians, and ship crew on the cargo being transported and the refrigeration units that is transporting them. The Lynx digital platform, coming out of our collaboration with Amazon Web Services, AWS, applies advanced Internet of Things analytics, machine learning, and various big data technologies to connect the cold chain in the cloud, to automate key processes and deliver real-time visibility and insights throughout the cargo's journey. Such insights include the Carrier exclusive Reefer Health Index with prognostics and diagnostics, empowering fleet managers to download diagnostic information about their equipment, giving them added insights into the health of their reefers by reporting anomalies, along with possible causes and potential measures to resolve or prevent them in the future. Notification and alarms that are managed by exception, providing fleet managers with full visibility and analysis that lead to timely, data-driven decision-making. And finally, mixed fleet support, which allows for a unified view of all assets comprising both carrier and non-carrier units on a single platform. So in summary, today's cold chain, we believe, is only a fraction of what it could become. As we continue to push the limits of what technology can do for all of us today, from supporting the global COVID-19 vaccination effort to enhancing cold chain visibility, from optimizing machine health to extending the shelf lives of perishables, we at Carrier remain resolutely committed to creating solutions that matter for people and our planet. Thank you very much for your time and stay safe.
Thank you, Kartik. The global impact of the refrigerated shipping industry is certainly a critical piece of the puzzle when we speak about an effective healthcare cold chain. We hope you've enjoyed our lineup of speakers today and learned more about the role Carrier plays in the global vaccine rollout. For more information on the upcoming webinar sessions or the Healthy, Safe, Sustainable Cold Chain program, please visit the URLs listed on the screen. As a reminder, we will distribute a recording of this session and an informational packet to all attendees via email after the event. Thank you.